So we'll be discussing about the key points in this. Now, first of all, topics which we are going to cover in today's session would be, we'll be discussing about the advanced authorization, that how this scheme works and how this scheme is relevant or related to the GST. Apart from that, the problematic rule, I would say, which is Rule 9610, and all the trail of amendments from that, the problematic rule, I would say, which is Rule 9610, and all the trail of amendments which have done to Rule 9610, which have created a huge mess, and how this is creating a big problem for exporters in today's time. You see, a lot of notices, or I would say intimations, have been given to all the advanced authorization holders in past 6 months by various authorities, wherein they are asking them to repay the refund amount. Now, how this issue started and what is this issue about, we'll be discussing it in very detail. Now, you see, the tail of this whole issue, it's not a new thing, or I would say it's not a new issue. This issue started with a judgment of Watson Pharma Private Limited back in 2018, wherein assessee or a petitioner challenged the Rule 9610 validity, that they stated that due to this restriction which is provided in Rule 9610, they are not able to utilize the unaccumulated credit. See, when an exporter exports, he do have various options, or I would say 2 options for exporting goods out of India or exporting services out of India. Now, how this Rule 9610 creates a bar on certain or a class of category of exporters. After the Watson Pharma, which is still pending, and government have done nothing in that or not filed any affidavit in that judgment or before the Honorable Court. Again, a judgment last year in October 2020 of Cosmo Films was pronounced by Honorable Gujarat High Court, in which it was said that a notification 54/2018, which was issued to correct few words in Rule 9610, to be read with a retrospective effect. Now, what have this retrospective nature of that notification have created a mess after that judgment, we will come to know in today's session, and how after that judgment all these authorities of DRI, DGST, GST audit wing have become a lot of active, and they are sending intimations, summons to various export houses, wherein they are saying that you have to let go either your IGST exemption or the refund which you have taken through Rule 96 route. Now, let's talk about the advance authorization. What is this scheme all about? Now, if you see, this is kind of my personal quote. If you say that best things in life are free, but sooner or later the government will find a way to tax them. The same happened with the advance authorization holders as well. You see, this scheme is available, or I would say given in the Chapter 4 of Foreign Trade Policy 2015-20, which is still in force. Though we are living in 2021, still this scheme is applicable. Due to this pandemic, they have extended the time limit. Now it's applicable up to 30th September 2021. And there is a Chapter 4 in that Foreign Trade Policy, which is duty exemptions and remission schemes. In one of the schemes is advance authorization scheme. Now, under this scheme, what is this scheme about? This scheme gives you a benefit wherein you can import your inputs from outside India without payment of any duty. So basically, this is for those manufacturers or those exporters, in their product, they are using input which they import from outside India. Now, this is a scheme about that. Now, if you see the para 4.04 to para 4.24 of that particular chapter, you will see the provisions of advance authorization, wherein a para 4.14 specifically provides which duties will be exempted in advance authorization. Because what we see when we do import from outside India, there is not only one BCD component is there. There are additional custom duties, education cess, anti-dumping duty, safeguard duty, IGST. All these levies are there. Now this have given in para 4.41 only that what sort of duties will be exempted. So FTP have a direct linkage with the Customs Act. And due to this levy of IGST, there is a linkage with the GST as well, if we talk particularly about advanced authorization scheme. And you see a lot of cess have been introduced, such as like social welfare cess, industrial development cess, or whatsoever cess they have come up with. That's why this para keeps on amending on time-to-time basis. Now, how the levy of IGST is on the imports. If you see the proviso to section 5.1 of IGST Act 2017, which says that IGST will be levied on goods imported into India, shall be levied and collected in accordance with the provisions of section 3 of the Custom Tariff Act 1975. So they have linked the levy and collection mechanism of IGST with the Custom Tariff Act, or I would say they have enacted that levy or powers to collect that tax with the Custom Act or the custom authorities. So accordingly, when they came up with the IGST Act, then consequently they amended section 3 subsection 7 of Custom Tariff Act, in which they mentioned or they included the IGST levy. So that's why there is a IGST levy on the imports if you import goods from outside India. Now, what sort of exemptions are given to advanced authorization holder when we talk about specifically IGST? So there is a custom notification 18/2015 dated 1st of April 2015, which was issued, which grants exemption from BCD component as well as additional duty of customs under section 3 of Custom Tariff Act 1975 on the production of advanced authorization license before the proper officer of customs and subject to terms and conditions specified therein. So basically notification 18, which gives the exemption from the component of BCD and all the duties which are leviable under section 3 of Custom Tariff Act. Now, after the introduction of GST, they came up with a notification 78 and 79. Because when the GST came into force, there was a levy of IGST. Now, through notification 78, they exempted the IGST portion for EOU units, for export-oriented units. And they issued a similar notification of notification 79, in which they gave the same exemption to the advanced authorization holder or the APCG license holder. Now, let's talk about section 16 of IGST. Section 16, which plays a major role for, I would say, for exporters, because it sets out a clear rule for exporters that what is zero rated supply. It means that if you are exporting goods or services, or if you're supplying your goods or services to SEZ unit, it will be deemed as zero rated supply. Now, a registered person, he is having that particular exporter is having two options of claiming a refund if he is making zero rated supply. See, the refund provisions are basically governed through section 54. But for exporter, it is specifically set out two kind of rules in section 16 itself. That either he can go for a mode in which he will be exporting goods without payment of IGST. See, if in India, or I would say in India, if you supply goods, there is a levy of tax. And as per IGST, if you are making interstate supplies, this export activity is considered as an interstate supply. So there will be a levy of tax on that. Now, for exporter, you have two options to claim the refund. Either you claim the refund of your unutilized input tax credit, or you pay the tax on your exports and you claim back that refund. Both of the refunds are governed through section 54. There are two rules, rule 89 and 96, which are rule 96A as well, who are taking care of the refunds, which are given in the section 16. Now you have two options. Either you take the LUT, letter of undertaking, or you make the payment on your export. But recently, if you see in the Finance Bill 2021, they have amended the Section 16. The option which I said that you had an option that you make the payment on your export, and automatically when you will file the shipping bill or when you will file the EGM, automatically the processing will be done at the customs end and you will get the refund automatic. You can say it is an automatic route of refund on your exports. But they have amended this option and they have said that this option will be available only to certain class of category. They have restricted this rule. That means by default, we will be having only the option of exporting without payment of tax. But I would say the exporters who will not be falling in that category, which they will be specifying, since this section they have amended, but they have not specified any class of category till now. But still, I would suggest that you should move to the category of exporting without payment of tax, because in future that might be a problem. See, this is a government, they might come up with some retrospective amendment as well. So they can ask the refund which you have paid on the exports. So this is a quite problematic amendment which is done through this Finance Act. Now through LUT option, how the things can be done. In LUT, you file the RFD 11, which is the LUT form, which you file on the GST portal, which is quite easy to file these days. And there is a section 54 to be read with Rule 89.4, in which the formula and everything is given, what sort of documents are to be given along with the refund. There is a specific circular which is governing the whole process. Apart from it, there are few restrictions when we talk about 89.4, Rule 89.4 or the LUT option. Since if you see the automatic route refund or the Rule 96 through which you are exporting with payment, there are no certain rules. That's basically just filing a shipping bill and you're paying the IGST and get the refund back. There are not much restrictions on that. But if we talk about the LUT options, you see you can only get the refund of an accumulated credit of only inputs and input services, not of the capital goods. And apart from that, there is a circular, there was a master circular which was issued when all refund procedures got electronic. And last year only through circular 135, they made a rule that only those invoices which are shown in your GST 2A will be applicable for the refund claim. So you see there is a restriction through this LUT rule. Even though you might be having a valid invoice or valid supply, still you might get denied the benefit of refund through this mechanism. So that was the reason that why most of the exporters were preferring this route of export with payment of IGST. Because in this, first of all, you don't need to file a separate application because of the shipping bill itself was treated as application. Apart from that, it can be claimed for each shipment, and 100% reimbursement is available in one go. You are not need to apply for like this much component will be given to you. Unlike in LUT option, there is a concept of provisional refund of 90% and 10%. So that ruckus is not in this method. And you see the process of customs is quite smoother. If you take it a comparison with the GST process, GST department process, you might have faced that procedural challenges as well, like uploading the documents, and there is a delayed payment as well. And there are certain other costs as well, like you might be going to the department again and again. So it becomes a problem. Now, how Rule 9610 plays an important role in the whole ruckus, or I would say the whole story. Now, what was the rationale behind Rule 9610? It is very important to understand that firstly, we read about or we talked about advance authorization, that there is a scheme which allows you to import duty-free components or inputs from outside India. Then we see Section 16 is there, which gives you an option to apply a refund through two routes. One is you can avail the refund of unaccumulated credit, and another route is you pay the taxes and you get the automatic refund on the filing of shipping bill. Now there is a Rule 9610 as well, with there are certain restrictions which are put on certain class of exporters, that if you fall under that category, so you cannot go for Rule 96 or the automatic refund. So the categories for which we will be having a discussion henceforth will be those categories who cannot apply for Rule 9610. So sorry, the automatic refund rule. Now, what was the rationale behind Rule 9610, or I would say why the restriction was needed? So the government said that sub rule 10 of Rule 96 of CGST rule seeks to prevent an exporter who is receiving goods from suppliers availing the benefit of certain specified notifications under which they supply goods without payment of tax or at reduced rate of tax from exporting goods under payment of integrated tax. This is to ensure that the exporter does not utilize the ITC availed on other domestic supplies received for making the payment of IGST on export of goods. So basically they came up with the idea, they came up with the rationale. They said that if you are an exporter and you have opted the automatic refund route, now when you pay the taxes, you have two options. Either you pay through the cash ledger or you pay through the credit ledger. Now they are saying when an exporter who have availed the exemption of advance authorization, so he is not basically having that IGST portion on imports. So what he will be having in his credit ledger, that will be only the input related to domestic supplies which he have procured from within India only. And he will be using that credit for making the payment of exports, and he'll get the automatic refund through that. Now they have a problem with this. They have divided ITC in two parts. They have said that you have a domestic ITC and then you have an import ITC. So only if you are importing with payment of IGST, then only you can go for automatic refund route. Otherwise, if you have availed certain kind of benefits on your imports, or if you have availed the benefit of IGST exemption, then you cannot go for 9610 because you will be utilizing the domestic credit for payment of that tax and getting the refund of those taxes. So that was the main intention behind introduction of 9610. Now you see this rule was introduced through notification 3/2018, and it was a retrospective notification since this provision is with effect from 23rd of October 2017. Now you see the language in these notifications. So I would request you to read it very carefully or give proper attention to this, that when they introduced this notification, so they use the wording that the persons claiming refund of IGST paid on export of goods or services should not have received supplies on which the supplier has availed the benefit. Now let's stop here. They are saying that person claiming a refund of IGST or the exporter, they are talking about firstly exporter, should not have received supplies. Then they have choose supplies on which the supplier has availed the benefit. Now they are saying that a exporter is having some supplies, and on those supplies, his supplier or from the person he have bought the goods have availed some benefit. Now he have availed some benefit under notification 48. He have availed some benefit under notification 40, notification 78, 79, and there are 4 notifications which are mentioned in this particular rule. So they are saying if your supplier have availed some benefit under these notifications, so then you will be denied the benefit of Rule 96, or you will not be given the refund rule, automatic refund. Now you see there is a problem behind the whole this rule drafting, because in which they have emphasis, they have some special emphasis on the word supplier. That supplier is supplying some goods to exporter, and exporter is exporting such goods or services. Now that supplier have claimed the benefit of either deemed export, which is given in the notification 48, or he have availed some goods from merchant exporter who there is a scheme for 0.1% of tax rate under notification 40 and 41. Then he is a EOU scheme, he is opting he's a EOU supplier maybe. or that supplier is having advance authorization. Now there is a problem when we read it in a way, because how a supplier which is located outside India can have an advance authorization or EPCI license. So you see, there is a problem. There was a problem in drafting. After that, when they came to know about this drafting error, they came up with a new notification. You see, earlier they came up with this notification in January 2018, and they came to know about the error in September 2018, when they came up with a new notification 39/2018, in which they divided this rule in further two rules. First rule is related to received supplies on which the benefit you have taken. So they have removed that word of supplier, since they came to know that how can a supplier can have these licenses. So they came up with the word supplies, that on certain supplies, if there is a certain benefit have been availed. So they have corrected their stand, or I would say they have corrected the intention which should be come out of this rule. Now again, in October 2018, they came up with again a notification of 53/2018, through which they came up with the rule which they introduced at first instance, and they have again used the word of supplier has availed the benefit. Now you see, they made an error, then they corrected it, then they again made a error without for no reason. There is no other change. No other change was made in this rule apart from this supplier thing, and they have submerged those sub rules which they have made earlier, got amended through previous notification. But on the very same day, they came up with another notification of notification 54/2018, in which they again rectified this rule, and they corrected this rule. So you see, government itself was not clear about that what they are doing. Like, they had the intention through the rationale which they issued through the circular. Then they came up with a bad notification, badly drafted notification. They corrected it. Then they came up with again drafting error, and then again they corrected on the very same day. But you see, the catch part of the important part in this is every notification which was issued in this respect was retrospective in nature. Only except to the notification 54, on the face of that notification, it was said that this notification will come into force from the date of notification. So only 54/2018 was prospective in nature. So that means whatsoever errors were in this notification got rectified on 9th of October 2018. So before that, if you had some imports or if you have availed some benefits of refunds, so all those are valid. That is what government itself is saying, that they have corrected this notification on 9th of October 2018 only. Now, after this notification, what are the main ingredients of this notification is, now if the exporter receives supplies on which following benefits have been availed. If exporter is availing some supplies on which is a deemed exports, or which is a merchant exporter supplies, and apart from that, if exporter himself is a EU unit or is holding advance authorization or EPCG license holder, then he will be denied the benefit of Rule 96 or the automatic refund route. Now again, a problematic thing came last year itself. Then in March, they came up with a notification 16/2020, in which they added explanation to this rule, in which they said that for the purpose of this sub rule, the benefit of the notification mentioned therein shall not be considered to have been availed only where the registered person has paid IGST and compensation cess on input and have availed exemption only for BCD under said notifications. So they said that suppose you were an importer having an advance authorization holder, you paid the BCD component, or you did not pay the BCD component, you took the exemption of BCD component, but you paid the IGST component on your imports, and then you are exporting with payment of tax. then you are eligible for Rule 96 or the automatic route refund. Now you see, they came up with that rationale, which they were explaining from, I would say, the inception, from this the whole story when they started with 96. They came up with the right intention after 2.5 years, almost 2.5 years, when they said that yes, if you have paid the IGST, then you will not be denied from the benefit of Rule 96. So you see, they themselves were not clear about the whole thing, and they were again and again correcting this thing. They never came up with a clarification. They never came up with a circular stating that these exporters are making a mistakes while exporting. They never did that. Now, after this, at present, this is the bare language of Rule 96, in which the correct wording have been used, that they have Rule 96.10 is further subdivided in 2 sub rules, in which they have used the word received supplies on which the benefit have been availed. And there is an explanation which is added to this rule as well. Now you see the trail. Let's briefly see the trail. Firstly, notification 3 2018 was issued, in which this rule got enacted. It was applicable from 23rd of October 2017. Then notification 39 2018 came, which corrected notification 3, or the corrected anomalies which given through notification 3. Then they came up with 53, notification 53, which again sent back the rule to the language of notification, first notification. Then they came up with the notification 54, in which they corrected it. Then the notification 16, which was retrospective, and they have included that explanation into that. Now, how the whole thing become problematic, and how these rules, or I would say this problem, came to the door of all these authorities. Now, in 2018, back in 2018, when first petition related to challenging the Rule 9610 was filed in Goa bench of Bombay High Court, in which petitioner said that due to this Rule 9610, their credit is getting accumulated and they are not able to utilize it. And again, they are carry forwarding it on each month. But the outcome of this writ is still pending, since the government have not submitted the response till date. After that, I would say the key judgment which was issued in October 2020 last year, in which again the challenge was made for Rule 9610, and it was asked, or it was submitted, that notification 54 2018 is not having a retrospective effect. It is a prospective amendment. But I don't know why the division bench of Justice J.P. Pardiwala and Justice Bhargava Dekaria decided that the amendment of notification 54 2018 is retrospective in nature. They said that it's a retrospective in nature. Now, if anyone want to avail or want to correct themselves, see, the intention behind this judgment was, the court discussed the amendment of 16, so came up with the notification 16 as notification 16 2020 as well. So they said that this rule is complete clear rule. Now, who have availed the BCD exemption and paid the IGST component, they are the right people who can avail the benefit of this rule. But if they have not done this, they are required to pay back that amount which you have taken as a refund, and you avail back that ITC, so that everyone can come on a same page. But I don't know why a court did not see that notification 54 2018 itself says that it's a prospective in nature. Still, there was an anomaly, and this judgment was given. After that, all these authorities got activated, and they sent multiple notices to the people, or to the exporters, who have availed both the exemption of BCD and IGST, be in 2017 or 18, up to 9th of October 2018. They sent them a data, or they sent them an intimation asking for the information, and they said that you need to pay back that amount. either you pay back your IGST component, which was exempted on your imports since you were having advance authorization, and you take back the credit of the same, or you pay back that amount which you have taken the refund through Rule 96. These were the contentions which they are still making and still doing that, which have become a nightmare for exporters. Now you see a brief background about this. There was a writ petition filed by Javeri and Company Private Limited before the Gujarat High Court in 2018 only, after they corrected this 54 and everything. So in which it was said that notification 53 is retrospective in nature, it is understood. But on the very same day when they came up with the new notification of 54, so what this notification will be having the effect of retrospective or prospective. At that time, in that particular writ petition, government filed the affidavit that notification 54 2018 is a prospective in nature. And at that time, High Court said that when government is saying that it's a prospective in nature, so no grievance is required. Then writ got disposed of. So government have itself admitted back in December 2018 that notification 54 is having a prospective effect, not a retrospective effect. So you see the whole story impacts two kind of exporters. First of them are having exports between 1st July till 9th of October 2018. And second of the category might be then from 9th of October till 16th or till 23rd of March 2020 till the date they come up with the notification 16. Then there are few people who are still availing the exemption of 96 or the rebate through 96. But in a previous time, I have seen this in a practical experience that they have their refunds or the refund got stuck. And with, I would say, cherry on the top, they have given a notice as well for the prior exports as well. So you see there are three kind of categories which are there. From 1st of July to 9th of October, from 9th of October to 23rd of March 2020, and from 23rd of March 20 till today. And each category, when you try to challenge or when you try to avail the options of correcting the anomaly, you see you will have to apply accordingly, but you will have to opt that option accordingly. Now, when they came up with this judgment last year in Cosmo Films, again Javeri and Company Private Limited went for a special civil application before the Gujarat High Court, in which they said that court, the Honorable Court have passed the order in which they said that this notification 54 2018, which should be read as with a retrospective effect. So I think there is some mistake in that. So court issued a notice in that. Now that matter is still pending in that. So Javeri and Company from the writ they have started, they have come up with a special leave application as well in this, in which they have filed a, I would say, application for reviewing that judgment, that you have mentioned something wrong in that judgment, so you please correct it or give us some clarification on that. Now you see other views. When we talk about section 164 in GST, which empowers government to make some rules on the recommendation of GST Council. Now you see this whole issue was discussed in GST Council as well. And we see imprints of the discussion from the minute book of 30th GST Council meeting, which was held on 28 September 2018, just before the date of notification 54 2018, in which the Honorable Finance Minister, State Finance Minister of Punjab, which said that role of GIC was mostly issue clarifications on procedural issues. GIC is GST Implementation Committee. When they came up with this GST, so they formed a committee for dealing out procedural or procedural issues or maybe some clarifications to the all the stakeholders. So the minister said that GIC should resolve these issues. They should resolve the clarifications, but they should avoid approving the amendments to rule with a retrospective effect. So basically that Minister cited it very clearly that you should not come up with retrospective effect. Rather than you should give them clarifications that exporters, dear exporters, you are making some mistake. These are the correct steps which you should follow. But no, they did not do that. Then he stated that the notification regarding Rule 9610 and such other decisions involving retrospective amendment should have been brought to the council. And it was only before 10 days before the council meeting that the notifications were issued. He cautioned that GIC should not submuse the role of council. You see, there is a difference between GIC and council. If we talk about the constitutional amendment, which was made specifically for GST, so they came up with the constitution of council. Now, all these committees have bureaucrats from the Ministry of Finance. In that, there is no role of states. So that's why these state finance ministers, you see, a lot of times they say that GIC's role should be less and council role should be there more, so that a matter can be discussed in a better manner. You see, in a previous meeting which held a few 2-3 weeks back, in which most of the matters were sent to the committees of ministers or the GIC. Then also a few of the members or few of the state finance ministers said that why are you giving the authorities of council to all these bureaucrats of your own ministry? So by that means they want to say that all these matters, the GIC should come up with a clarification rather than they came up with a notification which is having a retrospective effect. Now, to this allegation, the secretary responded that the Rule 9610 of the CGST rule was brought before GIC as the double benefit was being taken by the exporters in the form of import of goods on advance license, in addition to claiming IGST refund. Hence, it was an urgent matter on which decision had to be taken quickly by the GIC in order to plug the revenue leakage. He also pointed out that once the Honorable Minister from Punjab highlighted certain concerns regarding amendment to Rule 9610 or Rule 96 of CGST rules, an agenda note was now placed before Council to rectify the inadvertent mistakes and to permit refund of IGST paid on export of goods from the capital goods imported under EPCG scheme. He added that GIC decisions were circulated to all states before it is implemented, and the mistakes could be pointed out by any mistake. The Honorable Minister from Punjab stated that they would send a written communication on this matter. Afterwards, 2 notifications 53 and 54 were issued. You know about this now. So this matter was taken up in GST, and you see the key word which is being used by the Secretary of Council, which is a double benefit. He said that exporters are availing the double benefit. Now you see, if you are holding a valid advance authorization and no one contested your imports when you imported the goods, no one contested when you export the goods and avail the benefit of automatic refund route. And now after 3 or 4 years, you are saying that I was availing the double benefit. Double benefit of what? One benefit was given under the FTP, another benefit was given in the GST law, and there is an interplay, or I would say the procedural part is done through the Customs Act. Now, if exporter was wrong, why he was given or why he was allotted a valid advance authorization? So he should have served, they should have came up with some, I would say, show cause notice that you are having an advance authorization, so you should not be availing this benefit. Neither DGFT nor the custom authorities or GST authorities ever came up with any sort of notice or intimation to all these exporters, which they are coming right now after 3 years. So you see, there is a problem with the basic understanding or the interpretation. They themselves, I think, didn't know that there is a problem with this Rule 96 and how this is creating some problem. Now they came up with some retrospective amendments to correct their mistakes. You see the view of this retrospective amendment, which is given by the NACIN as well, which is the National Academy for Customs, Indirect Tax and Narcotics. They basically give the trainings to all these IRSs. So they issue a weekly update PDF on their portal, in which they have mentioned in one of their update, which they issued on 13th of October 2018. almost 4 and 5 days after the notification 54, in which they said that this notification 54 2018 will be having the effect prospectively. You can very well download that NASIN's weekly update, and it is given on the 5th, 6th, and 7th page of that particular update, that the institution which is, I would say, teaching all the IRSs itself says that it's a prospective amendment, but still they are backing this Cosmo Films and they are coming up with the intimations. Now you see how to handle this litigation, how to handle these notices which we are receiving from various departments. Firstly, recently, you see in past after October, from December till now, the DRI been active into this, the DGGST department is active into this, and they are sending these notices to advanced authorization holders. If you see the DRI's intimation, it is quite detailed one, in which they have mentioned or used the word double benefit 2-3 times, and they have asked for the data in their certain format. DGGST is also sending someone under section 70 of GST Act. Now you see both the authorities are facing some problems related to jurisdictional power as well, that we will also discuss. And apart from these two authorities, now since GST department is also having power to conduct the GST audit, so in their audit observations also they are coming up with this allegation of Rule 9610 violation, and they are saying that we should pay back this amount. Now, what options we do have, or how should we deal with this? Firstly, you can pay the amount of GST refund and take the credit. This is what this DGGST department is saying. Since DGGST department cannot deal with the issue of IGST exemption, so they are saying that you should pay the amount of GST refund which you availed through 96. At the same time, DRI is saying that you pay back that amount of IGST exemption and give back the amount under with interest as well. And third option, we might have that we can challenge the validity of Rule 9610. Now you will say this have been challenged a lot of times. So what will be the new thing after this? You see, when earlier the challenges were made, there were challenges on a assessee based, or I would say if you are having problem, you went through the writ and you challenge the validity. But now, after the wrong interpretations, after the I would say the mischievous notifications like be it 16 or 53 or 54, so everything they came up with the idea of retrospective amendment, because they themselves know that they did a mistake, that they did not intimated these exporters earlier. So now they are correcting their deeds by coming up with this retrospective amendments, which is creating a problem for exporters now. Now, which is how we should challenge it. Now, if we talk about first option, in which they say that you pay back that amount of GST and take back that credit, set amount will be added in the credit ledger. This is something which they are suggesting to the exporters. Now, if we opt these options, still we do have some questions which can be asked from us only, since there is no clarification from CBIC, or I would say there is no written communication by any of these officers that you should do this or you should follow this mechanism. So the first question will be, where is this mechanism for exercising this option? They are giving this suggestion only on the verbal basis. After that, after getting that credit in ledger, what will we do? Can we get a refund through Rule 89.4? Can we say that it is an unaccumulated credit? How will we come to know that on a later part in future, the GST department say that this is not an unaccumulated credit? This is a credit which you got through doing something or correcting something. You paid some taxes through DRC 03 and you took the credit in your GSTR 3B. So where is the document evidencing that? How will you justify that this is an unaccumulated credit? Or even if you justify that, or even if they say this, yes, this is an unaccumulated credit, so can you get the refund through Rule 89.4 route? Apart from that, if I am allowed to use the 89.4, suppose my some few of the exports were pertaining to 2017-18, they have become time barred now. Because when we talk about relevant date for exports, so it will be the year in which I have made some exports. Na? So 2 years have already been elapsed. So how this whole thing will be created, or how this whole, I would say, the benefit will be given. And when at the same time, when they are saying that you pay back that amount, you take that credit. So they also know that this is a tax neutral transaction. So all they just want to collect that interest only on this. Now, apart from that, even if you take the credit or refund route through Rule 89.4, how the LUT condition will be fulfilled in that? Now, there cannot be a backdated LUT for that. So, how these questions will be answered when we will be having clarity for these questions, then only we can go for this route. Only on the verbal, I would say, verbal suggestion by the officer, we should not go or opt for this route. Now, apart from that, if we talk from a DRI perspective, in which they are saying that you should pay that IGST amount which was exempted on your imports. So you should pay that amount and you take that credit. Now you see, when we read the section 2, subsection 62 of CGST Act, which states the definition of input tax, which says that input tax in relation to registered person means central tax, state tax, integrated tax, or union territory tax charged on any supply of goods or services or both made to him, and includes the IGST on imports as well. So they have included the IGST credit which you pay on imports in the definition of input tax credit. Now, what will be the legitimate document to avail the credit? Since you need the, as per section 16 of CGST Act, you need some documents to avail the credit, input tax credit. So accordingly, in Rule 36, Sub-Rule 1, point D, they have mentioned that bill of entry can be a document for availing, or will be the document for availing the IGST paid on imports. Now you see, when you pay back that amount, or you see you're doing anything or alteration to the import document, there is an import document called bill of entry which you file on your imports. Now, if you pay back that amount of IGST, will that be mentioned in that bill of entry? No. So what is the recourse to that? Obviously, you will have to file application for amendment in bill of entry. That this particular bill of entry in which have taken the exemption of IGST, in that particular bill of entry, I'm paying back the tax now. So that bill of entry should be amended to that extent. Is that an easy task? No. Though DRI officials are quite assuring exporters that you should opt this way, we will help you in getting your bill of entries amended. Everything is fine. I'm not saying that this cannot be happen, or this is not our right. Everything can be happen, but on a grassroots level, when we see that even for legitimate reasons, there are various applications for amendment are pending. Even we know that there is an error, even the officer knows there is an apparent error, still he is not allowing the amendment of bill of entry. It's not that easy task to do that. So again, I would say that there is no clear rule for this. There is no clear mechanism for this. Apart from that, the key, I would say the key component which I say, the whole transaction, if you see, this is the tax neutral. They are asking you to pay back that amount, take that as a credit. So obviously this is having no effect if your business is running. But there is an extra component which is called payment of interest. Now, how the payment of interest can be asked by the DRI official? Because if we see the definition of section 28AA of Customs Act, which allows for the imposition of interest on the delayed payment of a duty. Now, what is duty? Duty is defined in section 2, subsection 15 of Custom Act, which means the duty of customs leviable under this act, said act. Now, can you say that IGST is a duty of customs, or can be fallen under the definition of 2, subsection 15? There is a problematic, or I would say the divergent views among consultants and among the industry. And after this judgment of Jet Airways, in which the tribunal said that IGST collected under Section 3, subsection 7 of custom tariff act cannot be considered as duty. So how can DRI, that DRI is asking for the interest on that amount? They are not even allowed to. Now we will see that DRI is investigating, or the custom authorities of the jurisdictional custom court through which you have imported is investigating, mean the same thing, only with respect to exceptions to the jurisdictional power, which are now problematic for DRI authorities. But still, this is a point which can be challenged, that why interest should be paid on that amount. Apart from that, as I said, that before we go to the main issue of DRI's jurisdictional power, I'm just curious to know, or I'm reading about it as well, that how this offense is under Customs Act. IGST levy is as per IGST Act, and you get the refund through GST Act. All rules are governed through GST law. How Custom Act is getting involved into this? Just apart from that amendment of bill of entry, which section I have violated, or I would say which section is creating a problem of Custom Act? So why DRI or any custom authority is investigating into this? If I have violated some GST rule or act, so obviously the GST authority should come to me and say that you have availed this thing wrong. Since everything is connected through GST law, everything is came up through the GST law. And apart from that, even if you talk about DRI officers' jurisdictional power, so you see in a recent judgment of Canon India Private Limited, in which Supreme Court said that ADG of DRI is not a proper officer to issue a show cause notice. So DRI have not come up with any notice till now under section 28(4), which is a section for recovery for the tax. But still they have said that ADG, or Additional Director General of DRI, is not a proper officer. So as of now, you can make that very well, I would say, submissions before these authorities that you cannot ask for this information from us since you are not authorized. Though after that, obviously some other authorities will come up to you, but at least DRI cannot investigate into this matter. Now, which procedure to opt? Either I should pay back that GST refund which I got through Rule 96, or should I pay back that amount of IGST exemption which I availed on the imports? So in this, I would suggest that you should do the calculations. So practically we are also doing that in which category the exports were more. So to see that, that risk which we are going to take, either of the option, any of the option we opt is being litigative and can be challenged in future by these authorities only who are asking us to pay that amount. These authorities will go against us if we opt any of these matters. Nobody knows that. So there is no clarity from CBIC. If CBIC comes up with a circular or a notification later on that yes, if you are opting, or if you're that exporter who had a valid advance authorization or who did some process through this route, then you can say that yes, I have a valid documentation now, so I can opt for either of the options. Till then, we don't have any clear stated option, and every option if you opt is not going to give you a relief from litigation. All we can do is we can do an internal calculation and see I would say that how the situation, how much grave this situation is, and accordingly we take the decision. Now, suppose if you wish to challenge this rule, so can we do that? So I will be stating some few key provisions through which I'll be try to convey my intention, that wherein I'll be saying that yes, this rule is a problematic. Now, if you see the wordings which have been used in section 16(3), they say that subject to such conditions, safeguards, and procedure as may be prescribed. You see, this line or these words are used in both the clauses of 16(3), either of the LUT route or the automatic route. They have used this wording. Now, when we use the word subject to, it means it is having the effect of yielding to another provision to which it has been made subject. It means it is certainly overriding or giving a conditional effect to this. So the said term has also been said to need to override or to be conditional upon the rebate under 16(3) of IGST Act is thus subject to some conditions. So they are saying that for if you avail this benefit of section 16(3), there can be some conditions, safeguard or procedures. Now, other keywords which are used into this is, what are the conditions? There is a judgment of Supreme Court in Union of India and Rajdhani Grains and Jaggery Exchange Limited, in which court said that conditions are nothing but qualification, restriction or limitation modifying or even destroying to certain extent the right to carry on the business. In this judgment, what happened was there was a commission which was set up for association for regulating the business of association who were doing the forwarding contract business, and they imposed certain conditions on that. So then court said that condition is nothing, the conditions which are imposed by that commission is nothing but qualification, restriction and somehow destroying to the certain extent of the right to carry the business. So somehow those conditions are interfering in the rights of doing or opting the decisions while I conduct my business. So court said that they are the subject matter or media for carrying on the business and specification of commodities in which the business can carry it on a condition sounding only in the terms of regulation and control of that business. So what will be the extent of that condition need to be set out very clearly, that you cannot interfere into the rights of right to carry on the business. So that will basically violate the constitutional right which is given to me. Now, what do you mean by procedure? Now, the rebate is subject to procedure as well. Now, if we see the expression of procedure which is given in the section 2, subsection 87 of CGST Act, read with section 20 of IGST Act, in which says that which is prescribed by rules made under this act on the recommendation of council will be the procedure. It is a procedure now. The procedure is in which you make the rules on the recommendation of council. Now there is a section 164 which says that central government may make rules on recommendation of GST council. Now, for instance, we think that they have discussed this in GST council, in 30th GST council. Then they came up with all the intentions of coming with this retrospective amendments. But still there is a jurisprudential tradition which ensures that rule cannot be used for restraining the rights of taxpayer and imposing additional fetters of a substantial nature. Now they are coming up with a rule, obviously, which is restraining the rights of taxpayer. Like exporter is having two options, so he is denied the benefit of that option. Apart from that, it is affecting or imposing some extra conditions as well, that they need to pay back that amount as well. So they have not come up with the prospective amendment. They have come up with the retrospective amendment. So jurisprudentially, we cannot do that. And apart from that, if we see the whole scenario from the date of inception of that circular of rational till their date of their getting notices for this, and they have come up with the amendment in 16 as well, that government can introduce a certain class of exporters on which there will be a restriction that they cannot go for this automatic refund route. So by that, it means that till that amendment in section 16, there was no restriction. If there was restriction, then why they have come up with the amendment now? If there was a restriction in section itself, so they should have amended the 9610 only. Now they should specify those categories, those classes in section 16 only, or sorry, in section rule 9610 only. Why they have amended the section 16? Because to evident or to correct the anomalies which were there. It gives out a strong impression that till the date of amendment, there was no restriction in section 16 was there. because I see no difference in that. If they say that they can put out restriction through section 164 by coming up with this retrospective amendments, so why they are amending the section now? Now, when do we call a rule is ultra virus? What do you mean by ultra virus? Now, rule can be held to be ultra virus if it is repugnant to or inconsistent with the general purpose of the act. But till such time it is held, so it must be construed as being mandatory. I'm not saying that every rule should be cannot be inconsistent with the act, but when we talk about the harmonious interpretation or even the plain interpretation, so it should not defeat the general purpose of the act or the statute. Now you see there is no restriction in 16, there is no restriction in 54, but there is no restriction in notification 79 as well, through which they came up with this exemption which is given to advance authorization. But there is a restriction only in one rule. Now, can we say that that rule is inconsistent with the general purpose of section 16? I would say yes, because the whole idea of section 16 was to benefit the exporters. If you are into export industry, or I would say in any business, how your expenditure is getting incurred, how the accumulation of credit is there, what are the prices of your product in a domestic market, all these factors are not in the hands of exporter. Now, at the same time, he is put up with some conditions that this credit can be utilized against this credit cannot be utilized, this 3B2A thing. So they are coming up with all these, I would say, the provisions to pressurize all these exporters. Either they are giving up their business or they are settling outside India, where I would say that myth of living in ease of doing business era is more clearer. So you see in past 2 years, or I would say 3 years, most of the businessmen, most of the exporters are setting out business in African countries as well, in Dubai as well, in Middle East countries. So they are going outside India because in India, when you were given out the promise of ease of doing business, it's not getting fulfilled now. When there was this judgment of Supreme Court in 1971, in which they said that the rule were meant only for the purpose of carrying out the provisions of the act. They could not take away what was conferred by the act or whittle down its effect. So that means the same, that sets out a general criteria for rules that they cannot carry out those provisions which are given in the act, or they cannot take away that effect of main legislation, or they cannot override the act itself. Again, there was a judgment of Supreme Court in 1970 in which they were examining the provisions of MP Excise Act 1915. The legislature levied excise duty only on those articles which came up within the scope of section 25 of that act. Let's not go into the details of the judgment, but just see the observation of Supreme Court. It said that no tax can be imposed by any bylaw or rule or regulation under this unless the statute under which the subordinate legislation is made specifically authorizes the imposition. Even if it is assumed that power of tax can be delegated to the executive, the basis of the statutory power conferred by the statute cannot transgressed by the rule-making authority. Now, the rule-making authority have no plenary power. It has to act within the limits of power granted to it. Now, what is this about? They are saying that you cannot put out some tax or you cannot impose some tax through subordinate legislation. By means subordinate legislation, we means that there is an act, there are certain rules. So those rules are basically subordinating the main legislation. So you cannot empower a rule so much that it takes away the power of act itself. So a rule making authority has no plenary power. Even if you have delegated that power to rule, then also it cannot take away the effect, or I would say the limits of act which is given to it. Now, again, there is a doctrine as well. There is a, I would say, doctrine of promissory estoppel. Now, what is this doctrine is all about? We will try to relate this issue with this doctrine when we'll be discussing about this. That the doctrine of promissory estoppel has often been invoked in the cases of commercial disputes as well as the tax disputes as well. Although the concept of estoppel finds statutory recognition as well under the section 115 of Indian Evidence Act. So basically the doctrine of estoppel came up from the, or I would say evolved from the doctrines of equity, which simply means that the estoppel is that a person cannot resile from a representation he has made to another person if the other person has acted and altered his position based on such representation. So I would say, in a simpler words, I would say that this doctrine enables a court to stop a person from going back on his or her word. Suppose you have given me a promise, you have said that we will boost the exporter community when they were introducing the GST law, then they will boost this exporter community. They have promised this exporter community that yes, we will be drafting the law in a manner that it will benefit you. There will be a seamless credit. XYZ, a lot of promises were made. So can we apply, or can we say that now when they said that this benefit will be given, and now it have taken away from me through this retrospective amendment? Can they do that? So in a judgment of Supreme Court in 1971, Century Spinning and Manufacturing Company, in which Apex Court remanded back a matter in which that a petitioner filed a writ petition before High Court. They said that government cannot levy the octroi. Court said why? They said that court have promised us that they will give us the exemption, but no, they came up with the restriction, I would say the levy of octroi. So High Court rejected that petition. The petitioner went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court remanded back that matter on the pleas of promissory estoppel. That government promised that they will be providing the exemption, but again they came up with a levy of octroi. So it's basically the violation of principles of promissory estoppel, and accordingly they took the cognizance and they remanded back the matter to High Court for reconsideration. Apart from that, the doctrine of promissory estoppel was invoked before the Bombay High Court as well in 2018, in which KM Refineries, being the petitioner, filed a writ petition that due to curtailment in tax exemptions under the incentive schemes, when the GST was rolled out, the court, relying on Motilal Padampat sugar mill case, it is a good case for study of doctrine of promissory. It was said that the benefits as promised under the incentive scheme should continue despite the change in taxation regime. Even if the government have come up with a new taxation regime, then also they cannot do this. They cannot take away that benefit which was promised under the previous tax regime. So that's how the benefit was given to them. Again, in Delhi High Court, Hero MotoCorp have filed a writ petition on this promise, or I would say on this principle only, but it was in respect of budgetary support scheme which was offered, and through that budgetary support scheme, the benefits which were given, it were very less. So they came up with a, I would say, writ petition that the scheme is kind of a violative to this doctrine of promissory estoppel, that what is being promised to the exporter community is not given to us. So that's why this should be struck off. So that's how this whole issue should be dealt. So at last, I would try to sum up the whole issue is that certain class of community, or I would say that certain class of exporters, who are basically advanced authorization holders are being denied the benefit of IGST refund or rebate because it is restricted through Rule 9610, and they are being denied with the benefit, or I would say the denied the benefit of either of the options which they have availed, either the import, the duty-free import, or the export with payment. After that, few of judgments came to the place, especially the Cosmo films, through which they said that this amendment which was made through notification 54 is retrospective in nature, which is somehow hampering the business, or I would say hampering the exporters community a lot. So being a consultant, I would suggest everyone to read, or I would say study about the matter, or study about the figures, that how much credit was available to your client, how much payment was made, during what period it was made, and accordingly you can take the decisions and carry the challenging part thereon. Now, if anyone is having any questions, so you can very well reach me on my details are given on your screen. And apart from that, they can ask any questions right now as well.
So we have a few questions that has been mentioned in the Q&A.
Okay, so Krishna ji is answering that if we imported goods under advanced authorization with payment of IGST and avail the benefit of BCD, SWS and anti-dumping, in this case, can we export goods under payment of IGST and get a refund? Yes, you can. That's what they meant. That's what they said, that this was their intention basically, that you should make the payment of IGST and then you can get the benefit of automatic route. So apart from that, anonymous attendee, okay. My client has disclosed all his export supplies with payment of IGST in table 3.1 instead of 3.b for the financial year 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. Due to this error, the export invoices for such period has not been transferred to iState. Also, he does not have any domestic interstate supplies. The time to rectify such error through CA certificates as stated in customer circulars have expired. What can we do for issue of such block refund? See, the procedural part has already been elapsed. Though custom came up with a lot of, I would say, the relaxations from time to time, but still, if we couldn't avail that benefit, maybe you can see the quantum of amount involved and how your client is getting affected, and accordingly we can prepare for a writ petition as well, so that High Court can give us a liberty that only the procedural error was there and the benefit, which are the legitimate benefits, should not be denied. Shrikant is asking, IGST paid on exports of goods, but not transmitted from GST into iState. It was related to financial year 17-18. Amended in GSTR 1, but invoice number was not amended. So approached custom port, but plus GST but resolved. I couldn't understand the questions. If you can elaborate your question.
There was one more question earlier by Mr. Purushottam Gopalan. If you could just scroll up.
Okay.
How can
yes? Yeah. How can we get the IGST refund for the withholding cases by the DG system due to air freight amount is more than FOB value of goods? I would say I haven't studied this matter, but I couldn't even get the question as well. If you can ask it very clearly, Purushottamji, that would be very nice.
You can raise your hand, Mr. Purushottam, if you're still there. Like, if you just raise your hand and the host will enable you the talk feature so that you can ask the question via audio.
Sunilji is asking, during transaction period, BCD and IGST is paid for steel import. I'm I am not trying to understand what he's trying to ask. That if you have paid the BCD and IGST for stale import, then obviously this condition of 9610 is not applicable. Then again, there is a question. Section 3, subsection 12 of Custom Tariff Act reads the provision of the Custom Act and the rules and sub-regulations made thereunder, including those relating to drawbacks, refunds, and exemptions from duties shall, so far as may be applied to the duty or tax assessed as may be applicable chargeable under this section, as they apply in relation to duties leviable under this act. Yes. Now it is mentioned just now that interest provision is Custom Act is not applicable to IGST payable. Whether the provision is relevant, sir, see, the problem is there that enactment of levy of IGST will not come into picture till the time we came up with the introduction of IGST Act. So when the constitution got amended, so they specifically said that it will be an interstate supply and central government will put the taxes on the all these imports and exports. That's how the levy came into the picture. Now the collection mechanism, or I would say, since when you import, you file a bill of entry, so there is no question of GST at that point of time. So just for sake of, I would say, the ease of transaction, they came up with the option that IGST will be leviable when you will file the bill of entry. But still, it's a problematic thing. As per, if you see the Jet Airways judgment as well, that it's a very, I would say, that definition of 2 subsection 15 in which the duty is being defined, then that's a problem. That is it a duty which was primarily enacted through this act only or some another act? So is this a duty as per Custom Act or is being empowered only to the Custom Act? So we have asked that GST amount paid. Sorry.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. So GST amount paid is received as credit. BCD is wrongly charged by custom as primary import was returned of goods after 1 year. It is pretty sure that BCD is wrongly charged. How can this amount be received? If your goods have been re-exported or on the, I would say, the basis that goods were not in conformance with the procedure, then you can obviously apply for the refund. So there is a procedure for refund then for that duty. But
okay.
Whenever we, sorry, yes.
Yeah, go ahead. I thought you finished answering. So we have few hand raised for some audio questions. So I'll be allowing them to talk one after the other.
Sure.
So you continue the answer, sir. I will in the meantime.
Sorry.
You can continue the answer, sir. Hello.
No, I think any time limit for that. So the normal time limit which is given in the custom law will be applicable.
Okay. So we have some hands raised for audio questions. So the first one was by Mr. Anil Kumar Gupta. I'm allowing you to talk, sir. You can ask your question now. Mr. Anil Kumar Gupta, are you still there?
Mr. Anil Kumar, please unmute yourself.
Okay, I think he's having some issues. Okay, we'll go next to Mr. To Shailja Server. I'm allowing you to talk. If you have any question, you can ask. Okay, Mr. Srikanth is there asking for permission to talk. So, Mr. Srikanth, you can ask your question directly.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. Thank you, sir, for enlightening on the subject, sir. The question I had was with respect to the export of goods. Export of goods with payment of tax. Actually, we exported in the financial year 2017-18 with the payment of tax. We have amended in the GSTR1. Though the status in the portal is displaying as non-transmitted to IceGate, We amended, but by mistakenly we didn't amended the invoice numbers, which is matching with the shipping bill. With respect to this, we have visited the customs port as well as the GST and GST department also, and as well as we approached the GST help desk also, but we didn't got any resolving.
Okay, so what they are responding, what are custom authorities saying?
They are saying that it has been not transmitted from GST into IceGate.
Okay, and like, have they told you about any resolution process?
No, they didn't told any resolution process, sir, but we approached the circular number 5/2018 and 12/2018.
Right.
But still after showing their screenshots, everything as well as returns, but they are telling that it has been not transmitted.
Okay, so I would request you to visit, or I would say have a word with the appraiser once. And there are some, I think there is a post of technical joint commissioner as well, customs. So you try to meet him with all the representations which you have done till date. That's the only way you can do it. And apart from that, if these authorities are not able to help you, then obviously then there is a writ is the option, which will be obviously filed for the giving the directions to all these authorities to act upon.
Actually. Sir, another
Just-
question, sir.
Yes, yes.
With respect to EOUs, sir, actually there are EOUs, they will be having ITC lying in the ECL, which is maybe due to capital goods ITC. Is there any in that as advance authorization? Is there any option of going with payment of tax? Because
No,
they can.
In advance authorization, you can always pay the IGST on your imports. No, that's the always an option for that.
Yeah.
And then you can go for this with payment route as well for refund.
With respect to EOUs, sir, since the capital goods ITC is being lying in the stocks in the ECL.
Yes,
So
that's
is
what that's what I'm saying, sir. You can utilize that for payment of on your exports, because Rule 9610, or I would say Rule 96, which is the automatic refund route, does not bifurcate the ITC between input services or capital goods, unlike Rule 89. And in Rule 89, you have the bifurcation according to the type, but in Rule 96, there is no bifurcation such like that. So you can always avail that benefit of that utilization.
Okay, so EOS can also go for refund by using this route 9610.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Srikanth.
sir.
If you
Thank you,
pay
sir.
the
Yes,
IGST
sir.
on your reports, that then only.
I just at the time of imports, we need to pay IGST.
Right.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. We have another question by Mr. Govind. I will allow him to talk now. Mr. Govind, your question, please. Mr. Govind, are you still there? You can ask your question. We will come back to him. CA Prerna Prashori has a question. I will allow her to talk. Ma'am, you can ask your question now.
Sir, this is Kishore Pishori.
Okay.
There is a question regarding export of services. Can I get the refund on export of services? And how do I avail it?
You can export with payment, sir.
Yeah.
There is no problem in that.
But the question comes, how do I get the IGST refund? Because there is no reporting.
There is no automatic. Yes,
Yeah.
there is no automatic route of getting refund in services cases. You have to file manual application.
Yeah, that's okay. Manual application is filed, but it is not reflected in the GSTR returns, the input credit. You have to submit.
No. When you take the credit of GST payment, you are saying there is no debit entry.
No,
by that
there is no
system.
credit entry in IceGate, because when you export the services on website, there is no IceGate credit. How do we get it?
No, that's what I'm saying, sir. When we export of service with payment, there is not any involvement of customs in that.
Yeah.
You file your refund application with the GST authorities, and you will not be submitting any custom documents since there is no document involved in that.
But the officer says that the customs document is necessary. You have to submit to IceGate. Okay, that's what is his status.
But what would be the custom document for export of service? He's not
that's what
telling you
I'm-
that.
That's what I'm surprised. That is the reason I'm.
You see, refer only circular 125, and
Okay.
see what sort of documents are required in such kind of refund. And we are normally filing that, and we don't face any sort of issue wherein we need to get in touch with custom authorities. Since there is no involvement of that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Oblige.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your question, sir. Any more questions? You can just raise your hand, or you can just put it in the chat or the Q&A session. If you can raise your hand, we will allow you to talk, and then you can ask your questions directly. Mr. Govind, I can see your hand raised. If you have any question, please let us know. You have been permitted to talk. While we wait for Mr. Govind, Mr. Srikanth, I think, has a question again. I'll allow him now. Yes, Mr. Srikanth, you can
Yeah.
ask your question now.
Sir, this is with respect to the imports, sir. As per Schedule 1, there is a free, with even if imported without consideration is also liable for GST. My question is, for example, I am importing the oxygen container and for donating for the other means freely for the as a CSR activity, I'm donating freely. So the ITC could be availed, or it will be liable as a deemed supply, sir. Whether I need to pay or and I need to avail the ITC.
So you are asking about on imports, right?
Yes, sir. Imports, and I'm rightly donating to the other charity purposes.
But
Importing
it's not like
oxygen.
if you are doing it, so it will, first of all, without consideration, it will not be a supply.
Means I'm importing from other party, I'm distributing freely here.
That's what I'm saying. So since it will not be a supply, there is no question of that your one transaction is separate from another transaction. Restrictions are in respect with exempt supplies, not these kind of things. That is your discretion that you are not. I would say, if you are importing, see, the whole idea of ITC is to flow that credit to other party. Now, if there is no supply, suppose this will be deemed as kind of, I would say, self-consumption only. This is kind of like that. That if you imported something for your own, and even if you're supplying it for free, so that's not a supply only, na? And that ITC you can avail. If government would have come up with something that this is an exempt supply, and if you kind of supply these oxygen concentrators, so this will be exempt supply. In that case, that ITC cannot be availed. You will have to reverse that ITC.
Achha, okay, okay, sir. Okay, thank you, sir.
We have one more question by Shaija Server. You can ask your question now. You have been permitted to talk. Shaija, can you hear us? You have been permitted to talk. You can ask your question now. Oh, we have one more. We have another question from Rajani. I have allowed you to talk. Kindly ask your question.
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
yes.
You can ask your question.
Sir, my question is that suppose I purchase some silver coins to pay as a gift to my customer. This is, some I purchase from registered supplier person, and some I purchase from unregistered supplier. How should I treat this in my books of accounts?
Are you importing any of these coins from outside India, or like how this transaction is?
No, I'm not importing. I'm buying it locally.
Okay, so you're buying it locally from some unregistered persons as well, and from registered person as well.
Yes, yes.
And you are into this business only, gold business or gold?
No. We deal in garments.
Okay, so in
We
that,
are giving it as a gift to my customer on Diwali.
okay, so that will not be a supply, and you cannot avail the ITC on that.
Okay, sir. Thank you,
Right.
sir. I can't take credit of this purchase.
Right. And apart from this is not even, see, when we see any activity, it will be connected with the definition of supply. So if it, even if it is not a supply, so I would say this is not even your business as well. So there are some nexus problems as well related to this. Since you are not into the business of coins and all.
Yes, you're right. Mhm. So my other question is that is to give it as a gift on completion of some target to my customer.
Okay.
Suppose then how I should treat ITC which I paid on purchasing of washing machine in my books of accounts.
See, it all depends how that document is being designed. When we talk about all these sales target incentives, which are in kind of a discount color, I would say. There is 100% discount, I would say, on this transaction or on these 1+1 transactions. So how that document is being designed, because it has direct relation with block credit, section 17.5. See, if you're giving anything as a gift, so if it get covered under section 17.5, it will be a block credit. So if you don't want to color it as a gift, then only you will be able to take the credit of the same. So firstly, you will have to take that, make that arrangement or make that agreement like that. So it will not be counted or treated as gift. Then only you will be able to take the credit of the same.
Sir, I gave it as on completion of target.
That's what I'm saying, ma'am. As of now, I don't know the I would say the arrangement, how it is, how you're giving, what sort of invoice is being issued or what sort of document is being issued, how you procure that particular product. So it all depends. But on overall, you are just get my attention. You will not be treating it as a gift. When we talk about all these incentives which we give on certain getting the target, all these sales target incentives, in my view, these are not gifts, because there is a consideration, there is a sort of consideration that for giving out that product, that person performed. So obviously it's not a gift. There are few judgments as well behind that, wherein you can say that this is not a gift and you can take the credit of the same.
Okay,
If I will give a plain reply to this without going into the documents, I will say you can take the credit, but be careful while designing the documents, because in these days, audit authorities, especially to all these traders who gives these sales incentives or proportional benefits, then they take out that backing of section 65 and section 17.5 of block credit, and they will say that this is kind of a gift and you cannot take the credit of the same. So just try that you should not be falling in that particular section.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your question. We have one more question from Mr.
sir, to avail the credit of this amount.
Hello. Yes,
Hello.
ma'am. Continue. I thought
Yes,
your
yes.
question was over. Okay.
Sir, my question was not completed. Sir, I'm asking that how should I issue invoice to the person to whom I am giving this washing machine on completion of target to
Ma'am,
take the ITC?
That's what I'm saying, ma'am. It all depends on the document through which all this was promised. See, if I'm going to give you a washing machine, obviously there will be some prior agreement to that as well. So accordingly, I will.
It is oral agreement, sir. It is oral agreement between
No.
parties.
Then no. It won't suffice. Then you will have to get a formal agreement in which you will be stating it that on this particular completion of this target, you will be given a free gift. Then don't use the word gift, but you will be given as a kind of a consideration for that. Then only it will get a color of non-gift transaction. You get a document first for all these arrangements. Verbal agreement or arrangement won't work.
Okay. So suppose we had made some agreement for this, then for how much amount we should issue this invoice?
There is no criteria for that.
Suppose washing machine value is 12,000 and we are not charging from the person who is completing the target, then for how much amount I should issue the invoice, or I don't need to issue the invoice?
Now you can issue the invoice and show that there is a 100% discount, or your arrangement can be done like that.
I can issue invoice of 100 only. This will work.
Yes, but you will have to issue a document for that, I'm saying.
Documents. I'm saying the invoice. Like,
Your voice.
hello.
Yes, your voice just got lost.
Your voice is breaking now.
Hello.
Yes, please say.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Sir, we have suppose we have made an agreement for that that you, when you will complete this amount of sales, then we will give you a washing machine as a gift. Suppose I have, then to avail the IT, for how much amount invoice I should issue, and which document we should issue for this? My question is this.
That's what I'm saying, ma'am. There is no, first of all, there is no restriction on the amount, that as much as amount it can be. Second, the invoice which you will be issuing to the ultimate person who have achieved the target. So that can be with some discount thing you can show in that, and obviously it will be a normal document only.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
There
Thank
are
you
no
so
rules
much
for this.
for the
Okay,
question.
sir.
You can always go back to Navjot. He has his email ID just displaying, so you can mail him in detail your query. We have one more question from Mr. Harihara Sundaran. I have permitted you to talk, sir. Please.
Yes, sir. I am audible, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, sir, for our wonderful webinar on the subject. My question is whether ITC has to be reversed on free samples exported, sir. Because there is no foreign realization on that value of export.
I did not get, sir. Can you please repeat? I think the voice is.
Sir, I am exporting goods as a free samples to my overseas buyer.
Okay.
Whether I have to reverse proportional credit availed on that input used for making such supplies?
Yes, you need to.
Yes, because in earlier central excise law, as per rule 6.3, we need not reverse any credit. What is the position under GST, sir?
In GST as well, the position is same. If you're giving your supplies as a free sample or as a gift, it does not bifurcate between zero rated supply or I would say this. There is only, I would say, the restriction or the clear intention they have given is for exempt supply only, not for all these free samples and gifts. So when we talk about section 17.5, which speaks about the conditions of section 17.5, it does not bifurcate between zero rated supply or the domestic supply. So you will need to reverse back the credit.
Thank you, sir. The rules 96B also gets attracted, no, sir?
Yes.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We have last two questions, sir. If you can just go back to Q&A. We have one question from Shailaja's server. She couldn't connect via audio. So if you can just go back in Q&A, you can see her question.
Okay. Can I get refund payment of commission received as service provided in petrol pump? Can I get refund payment of service? I couldn't get what sort of commission you're getting, and no, I'm asking what sort of commission, like on commission on what?
I think she's typing the questions and now because of our audio is not working properly.
Right.
There's one more question in the QA by Anonymous, if you can see.
He's just mentioning that.
Just above her.
Yes. He's saying that the interest provision under the Custom Act is not applicable to IGST payable under Section 3(7) of Custom Tariff Act. Now, Section 3, subsection 12 of Custom Tariff Act do not authorize collection of interest in respect of IGST in terms of Section 3(7). So that's what the problematic thing is. How you are interpreting that 7.3 and 7.12.
Okay, time for the last
Okay.
question for by
Yes.
Mr. Srikanth. So you can answer it in Q&A.
Yes, for refund, they are restricting ITC not reflecting in GST at 2A and denying refund on that. Though 2A has not been notified, sir, denying refund based on circular 135, not in GST 2A. Sir, I would say, first of all, 3B, 2A, in my view, this is very problematic. We always litigate this issue that even if an invoice is not getting shown in GST 2A, you still go and claim for it. If you have a valid supply chain, you can request, because earlier when there was circular 125, in that it was shown clearly that if your invoice is not getting reflected in GST 2A, you can show the respective invoices to the jurisdictional commissioner or the assistant commissioner. So their intention is very clear. They want to give the refund only for those invoices which are legitimate in nature. Now, due to some procedural error, if your supplier have not, shown that invoices GST or 1, that's not your fault. So if the quantum of that particular amount is a bit high, so you should litigate that.
I think there are like no more questions. Fine. Again, if you want to go in detail about your queries, there's the contact information for CN Navjot Singh right in front of you. You can mail him or contact him in the number that is provided. We will wind up the session, I think.
Yeah, just one last thing that first of all, very thanks to the TechScan team for arranging this. And apart from that, there is a discount coupon you can avail. The coupon is Navjot Singh, and you'll get the discount on the subscription of TechScan, who is doing the tremendous work in this technological arena, wherein we need some quick access to all these judgments of SysTet, ITAT, or all these important laws. So congratulations to the team.
Thank you so much, sir. So this is another session of Simplified series. Thank you so much, CN Navjot Singh, for joining us at such a short period. We hope that you'll be joining us with more interesting and relevant topics in future in the Simplified series. So thank you so much, sir, on behalf of my team.